Hi, I'm Dr. Jason Fung. Today I'm going to go over a practical guide to fasting, everything you need to know to get started.
Hi, I'm Joel, and I'm going to be reacting to Jason's video about how to get started on fasting. Let's see what he has to say.
What is fasting? Fasting is simply any period of time that you're not eating. And you have to understand that this is normal. Part of the day we're going to be eating. That's when we're going to take in calories and we're going to store some of those calories because we are taking in more calories than we can use. So your body can store it as body fat or as sugar. When you don't eat, when you're fasting, that's the signal to take those calories out of storage and to use it for energy. And our body has the ability to do that. There's nothing unusual about it. That's why you don't die in your sleep every single night. And this is just normal. You need to balance feeding and fasting. Part of the day you're going to store calories, part of the day you're going to burn calories. If you don't keep them in balance, if you're storing calories all the time, you might gain a lot of weight. And this is normal. That's why we have the word break fast or breakfast. So people who say, oh, I don't support fasting, fasting is bad for you, well, then they must support the fact that you're supposed to be eating all the time. But if you're eating all the time, when is your body supposed to burn those calories? You're not giving your body a chance to do it. That's all we're talking about. And it's been done for thousands of years. There are fasting traditions that have gone back thousands of years. We know it's safe. We know it can be done well, safely, and in many cases, to great benefit. The other important thing to understand is that fasting is voluntary.
There's some people that say that fasting is bad for you, but I think that's a misconception. Like, who are the people who are saying that? Firstly, I don't think they necessarily come from a medical background or any kind of point of knowledge, but they are basing that assumption on a bias that's been created throughout the world and throughout the food industry that we, to be healthy, should be eating regular meals, and the concept of like 3 square meals a day has been introduced probably only in recent history in terms of us as a species. There are certain incentives that businesses and corporations need to be making sure that we are continuing to consume their products and their produce. So the idea of eating regularly has become part of what's considered normal in society. Let's use the example of your pets at home. Now, a lot of us have pets, and I'm not saying you love your pets any more or less if you're only feeding them once or twice a day. But typically, when you get a dog, you talk to the vet, you research how to look after this pet. Usually it says, give them this portion of food this many times a day. And it is very rare that we're recommended to give our pets more than 2 meals a day. In fact, sometimes it's quite often allowed to just feed them once a day, providing you're hitting sort of a minimum portion size allowed for that type of dog, usually based on its size. So we're actually rationing the food that we give our pets, and we're rationing the time that they eat and allowing them to have a fast. And that's because we know that if you continue to spoil your pet, or you love your pet too much and you feed them all the time, just like a human, they're going to gain weight, and that's really bad for their health. And in nature, if your dog was wild and roaming free, or if your pet was wild and roaming free, they would not be eating such an abundance of food. Just like us as humans, wouldn't have been able to adapt to eating so much food. And that's why there's such an obesity epidemic in the world at the moment. So fasting is not unhealthy. In fact, it's probably, from an evolutionary point of view, what we're expected to do, how our body is expected to function. And there are going to be periods of fast when food is not abundant, and therefore we will burn our fat in our fat stores to survive those periods of fast until our next feed is available. And therefore fasting is not actually unhealthy, it's quite normal, and you're not forcing yourself to fast. And I think that's the next point that he's about to make.
The other important thing to understand is that fasting is voluntary. You're always in charge of the process. Starvation is not voluntary. You don't have food, you don't know where it's coming from. Fasting is a voluntary abstinence of food for whatever reason, whether it's part of the daily schedule, whether for its health, religious, spiritual, or other purposes, is fine.
Yeah, 100%. People think that I'm starving myself, but I'm just fasting by choice. And that's just abstaining from food, right?
Just any period you're not eating, but you can still drink fluids. Classically, fast or water only. But there's many variations that you can use. In fact, you can take a lot of fluids such as green teas, herbal teas, or coffee without sweeteners or sugar or cream, and they have no calories, so they're not really going to break your fast. Because they have no energy, your body is still going to need to use some of those calories. You can also use things that do have a few calories, which is not a true fast, something like bone broth, for example, or a little bit of cream in your coffee. And that's generally okay because the amount is so small that, yes, you'll store a few calories for a few minutes, but then you'll go right back to burning them. So
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Fung there to an extent. However, as he alluded to, like traditional fasters will say you just shouldn't eat any calories during your fast because you'll break your fast essentially by having some calories. But there are sort of some things that will have such a small amount of calories, it'll have like a negligible impact on you, particularly if you're doing fasting in order to manage calories and lose weight. There are other people that are doing fasting or are involved in fasting to try and balance their insulin sensitivity. So if you are having little spikes of calories throughout the day, that may affect your insulin, which is a hormone that is secreted in response to calories entering your system. So, be mindful of that. But traditionalists will say just don't have anything with calories during your fast. But as Dr. Fung said there, 5 calories here or there is not going to be such a problem, but the problem is it adds up. So if you're focused on fasting and being consistent and your goal is weight loss, then abstaining is better. I also find personally that if I do start to break my fast, because of the hormonal response, because of other things that your body responds to when you're eating and your appetite is triggered, sometimes just a little food for me triggers a snowball into a full meal. And if that's the case for you, and it's another reason to abstain from food during your fasting window. Let's see what else he has to say
about that. Why should you fast? There's actually a number of very good reasons why you should fast. One is that it creates a structure to your eating day. A lot of us don't know how to eat anymore. In the 1960s, 1970s, it wouldn't be hard anymore because it ruin your dinner. If you wanted a bedtime snack, your mom would say, no, you should have ate more at dinner. There were just periods of time that you eat. Now, people are confused. They think they can eat any time they want. And they can eat as often as they want, and it won't make any difference. The truth is that it does. If you eat more frequently, it's a lot easier to eat more. If you're eating when you're not hungry, well, there's a good chance you're going to be eating foods that you shouldn't be eating. Second, it builds dietary consistency. If you're eating the same 1 or 2 or 3 meals day in, day out, giving yourself that good period of fasting, well, you're going to be consistent, and consistency is the key to getting results. But even more important, consistency builds habits. If you get into habits, you don't need willpower. And that's so important. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't have to will yourself to brush your teeth. It's such a habit that you just naturally do it. Well, if you build that habit of having specified meal times and specified fasting times, it's not going to be hard anymore because it's ingrained. Number 4, it's a very easy way to control your eating. What you're doing is you're counting the hours that you're allowed to eat, the number of meal times that you have, rather than calories, because counting calories is notoriously inaccurate.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there to echo a few points there. For me personally, I've been doing OMAD, 1 meal a day, which is a type of fasting where you only eat once, usually for like a 1 hour eating window. Sometimes I do a 4 hour eating window, so I do a 20-hour fast, and then a 4 hour eating window, or a 23-hour fast, and then a 1 hour eating window. But other types of fasting, this is still relevant. For me, I found that what it's helped me do, it's helped me be consistent with my diet. And whenever you're doing something consistently, in this case, maintaining a consistent 1 meal a day, or a consistent regular pattern of eating, which created for me a consistent calorie deficit. I'm burning more calories than I'm consuming in that 1 meal a day. And doing that consistently over a long period of time allowed me to lose considerable weight, up to 30 pounds, which you can see on some of my other videos. The other thing that I noticed from doing fasts and doing fasts consistently once I was in the habit of it is some of the other symptoms and challenges associated with fasting, which Dr. Jason Fung is going to go into shortly, around appetite and hunger, seem to go away. Some of the people say that because you're eating less and your body's consistently adapted to eating less frequently, your stomach does seem to, I want to say, shrink, so that you don't actually eat as much when you sit down to eat as what you used to before you start to feel full and satiated. So those are some of the benefits that I've found of fasting and why I think it works.
I'm going to give you a few tips to get started. First, ride the hunger waves. Expect that you will be hungry. When you start anything new, your body needs to adjust. So if you start increasing your fasting period, you're going to be hungry because your body is expecting to eat and you're not eating. Well, that's normal, but keep in mind that the hunger does not persist. All the studies of hunger show that when you don't eat, your body will feed itself through the body fat or the stored calories, and the hunger will go away. Now, we've all experienced this when you miss breakfast, for example. Yes, you're hungry at first, but then eventually your hunger goes away. It doesn't keep building and building. Let it go over you like a wave. Just ignore it. And that takes me to my number one tip, which is that you need to stay busy. And that's how you're going to take your mind off of it. So there's lots of things that you can do. You can take a bubble bath. You can listen to music. You can call your parents. You can do some dusting. You can organize your room. You can do some spring cleaning. Exercise is a great way to take your mind off of things because as you start exercising, all the blood goes to your muscles and you stop thinking about it. Especially exercises that are like games, like tennis. You get so engrossed in it that you forget that you didn't eat. And your body is naturally...
Yeah, there's some great tips there. I think I'm reminded of a video I watched about Christian Bale when he lost a huge amount of weight, an unhealthy amount of weight for a role in The Machinist, the movie where he had to play an anorexic, and he was obviously incredibly emaciated, but I was interested in the process that he went through to lose the weight, and he basically restricted his calories right down to a very unhealthy level, but he described how he got through the hunger. And he used to say things like whenever he felt hungry for food, he would just say to his mind, you're not hungry for food, you're hungry for something else. And whenever he said that, he would say, for example, you're hungry for knowledge. So he would go and read a book, or he'd say, you're hungry for connection. So he'd call a friend, or he'd say, you're hungry for activity. And as Dr. Fung said, he would go and exercise. Also, exercising, and you could just do moderate exercise, take a walk, play a game of tennis, whatever, has the benefit of tricking you out of your hunger wave, but it also is burning calories. So, like Dr. Fung said, it's getting the blood flowing, it's getting you focused on something else, but guess what? You're also burning calories, which you would be eating if you listen to your hunger cravings. So, good advice.
There are certain things that are important to not do. Social media is probably a big one of them because there's a lot of food. A lot of times when you go on TV also, there's a lot of advertisements. And you don't want to be reminded of food when you're fasting. It's just not a good idea. Grocery shopping is also something is very difficult to do because you're going to tend to want to buy things and then you're going to be reminded. Cooking, going to a mall where there's lots of food courts, for example, and there's smells of the food court. Those are probably not a good thing. Also, parties are very difficult because oftentimes there's food. And so those are things that are best not to do during fasting. And the good thing about fasting is it's totally flexible. You can arrange it to do yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we don't talk about the challenges and the things that you should be not doing enough. And it's a really good reminder. I totally agree. Whenever I go grocery shopping while I'm fasted or hungry, I have a really hard time controlling what I'm putting into the trolley or the cart. My bill gets bigger. I tend to rush home and have whatever I've purchased as a snack, and it's usually the crap, the junk, the stuff you shouldn't have been eating in the first place. It's very rare that you go to the grocery store and put together a great menu or a recipe for some super high healthy food and then rush home and spend the afternoon cooking it and avoid doing a snack throughout that process. So yeah, one tip would be try online shopping. I know recently we got a deal where we could get, we purchased a membership at our local grocery store for a year. I think it was around about $100, but it meant every time that we spent $30, we would get free delivery. We have definitely got our $100 back in a year. So keep your eye out for specials like that and use the delivery service so that you can just buy the essential food that you need. There's very little risk that you're going to snack, and when the food arrives, you pop it in the pantry, you pop it in the fridge, and your work's done. We've actually also saved a lot of money doing that because we're not wandering around the store aimlessly putting things into the cart. The other thing that he mentioned there was avoiding parties, avoiding social settings. I think you need to be pragmatic about that. You don't want fasting to ruin your life, but be honest with people that you're not going to eat. Sometimes people are just curious, and take something that you know that you can eat. So if you're going to a party, and I do this now that I also gave up drinking alcohol, I make sure that I've got alternatives. So whether that's a diet cola with 0 calories during a fast, or if I'm in my eating window, non-alcoholic beverages, beer, colas, that sort of thing. So there are alternatives. You can be prepared for those situations. Obviously water, tea and coffee as well. The other place that's a definite challenge for me is social media. I mean, social media is bad all the time, but whatever. So I find that when I'm on social media, I get a lot of, because I do a lot of food reaction videos, I often get a lot of food videos in my feed, and that does make it pretty tough, particularly when I'm breaking a fast or hungry. I often just send those recipes that I think are cool to my wife, and I distract myself that way, or share them with friends. Or, you know, just don't put yourself in a situation where you could be converting your seeing of food and your visualizing temptation to actually breaking your fast. It's hard to do, but just be mindful of it. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. I hope you like this review. I haven't reviewed the full video, so check it out on Jason Fung's channel. And also check out some of my other videos on my own channel where I talk about how to get started on OMAD, how to exercise on OMAD, and what you should be doing during your eating window. Thanks, guys. See you later.